Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's SIIA Tech Chats. Joining me is Steve West, CEO of Project Insight. Project Insight is a business management platform helping teams work better together. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start. Let's talk about project management software. What is the strategy behind successfully choosing a project management system today?
Well, I think there's a couple of key things that you have to think about, but the first is just at least having a basic understanding of what your processes are and the things you need, like whether or not you need various types of functions like approval, routing, or the type of scheduling you might need to do, what your basic business process. So no software is going to help you do that. So you really need to at least get a handle on what your processes are, so that then you can take those processes and evaluate the software that whether when you're looking for tools, it's like, will this tool do what my process is? So that's really big.
Well, what are some red flags then that we should be looking for that could kind of impede the success or make life difficult when you want to evolve your project management strategy down the road?
Well, the biggest thing is that, there's no one tool out there anymore. There's no one like panacea tool that's going to get your job done. So some of the things you got to think about when you're implementing these software is making sure that your tool is kind of open. Whatever tool you choose is really open platform versus just complete closed system. I think that the days of software being delivered, like, okay, for example, a really good example is, let's say you're a PMO director and you're looking for a project management tool to help you get a handle of all of your projects across your enterprise. Well, some of the departments in your enterprise might have a different tool and a dialed-in process that's totally running very well. And it's super hard as a PMO to go in there and say, okay, well, Joe director down here, I know you have all your processes dialed in, but I'm going to completely disrupt the way you're doing things, and I want you to switch to this tool. So that's can be a big red flag, and some of the things that having an open tool that could integrate with that other tool is really helpful. So those are things that you can get in the way of you evolving your project management, is that having already existing processes and tools in place, having to disrupt all of it. What you want to do is find a way to implement some of your new project management processes without completely disrupting everything. So those are important things to consider. Also, just making sure you have a place where you can gather all of the information as well. Like a lot of project managers we find end up using tons of spreadsheets because they're basically aggregating things from all over the whole entire organization. So, those are things that over time you want to smooth that out by automating it and moving data around through APIs and things like that.
Now, last year you brought on a new AI, artificial intelligence team. What role does AI have in project management, and specifically, how has that team made an impact for your company?
Well, for us, we ended up with a patent last year for new technology we're developing in project management. So our vision here at Project Insight is that our vision is to automate the project manager's job completely. So we're seeing all kinds of automation all over the world, self-driving cars, all this other stuff. So if you step back and look at automating the project manager's job, what does that really mean? We've been doing it all along for the last 15 years with our product by building a web app and then sending email alerts out and doing all these things. And the thing that we've been doing the last several years that's really big is we've changed the way we think about project management in general. We're trying to disrupt the way it's done. The way it's been done in the past is you select a product and you just move this new product in, and everybody else stops using the other tools they're using. We're all going to use one tool, and everyone's going to be happy in this one tool that we just chose that costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars to put in, or depending on the organization size, or smaller companies, tens of thousands. And at the end of the day, no one ends up being happy in that case. So we said in our product, we've evolved our product to be less about that and more about how do we ingest from other systems that are complementary to ours? So, for example, we built integrations for Jira, we built integrations for Visual Studio Team services. So that way, like a dev team who's very happy in their own process, they don't even know they're actual users of Project Insight because the PM gets Project Insight, makes that connection, and syncs up, and all the time and tracking and all the things that they care about for the executives where they're reporting up, that just gets aggregated. The person at the end of the line stays using the tool that they're happy with. And so while we were doing that development, we were starting down the road of, well, this is 18 months ago, we were talking about our Slack. We were like, okay, now it's time to integrate with Slack, for example. So when we started discussing it, I started talking about it with my marketing team. I'm like, well, okay, well, we're going to go into Slack now, and we're going to have a bot over there. And the conversation went from, wow, if we're going to have a bot in there, our bot better not be boring, and it was like, well, then we kind of evolved it. Well, shouldn't the bot like just be a human being or a person? And so it led us to, that sounds like we have, and everyone knows the bot's not a real person, but it did lead us to the idea that when we built this integration to text, so it's basically a new text interface for our app, that the bot or the app shouldn't be boring. It should be fun and exciting to engage people that are used to using tools like Slack. I mean, all these younger millennials, they're super used to text and text messaging, and that's how they work. So in order for us to make our product more useful to companies, we should work in that environment so that a person who's really used to text can just say, hey, you know what, I'm just going to work with text. I'll never log into the web app. They can just use their smartphone and say, oh, I'm done with the task. So now we introduced this AI concept, and our patent's all about, if we're starting to talk to people using text, then we should be more interesting than, if I have to tell you have a task to do, the way that we would do it in the past with email is like, okay, here's your email alert, and every single email looks exactly the same as every last one you ever sent before, and people just ignore that stuff. So if we're going to send you a direct message via Slack or text or whatever, we should be more interesting. So we should be funny. We should be this or that and the other thing. So that kind of led us down that road. And then when we started going down that road, it was like, well, now we need to find out if being funny is actually better than being mean. Because all of our AI bots have personality, and they don't send you the same thing. And we're just keeping track of all the things we send to a team member, and we're evaluating over time what the effectiveness of those communications are, just like a human might do. So that's kind of led us down that road, and it's really changed the way we think about software and how we make software, because most of us have been making web apps now for a while, or mobile apps that are just, it's all user interfaces, graphical. Well, changing your program to be a text-based program changes the way you interact with your user. It's not graphical anymore as much. It's about what you say, how you say it. Are you funny? Are you mean? Are you happy? So, in just fact, this week we introduced a brand new team in our Slack app. It's a heroes team. So if a kid, like a younger employee is tired of working with the virtual PM that we assign to them, they can switch to a superhero. The vision of that was like, why not work with Batman if you're bored with the team member? So, I mean, we're not using Batman per se, but a superhero that maybe emulates that. So
I love that.
Yeah, so it was just an interesting evolution to me. Also I've talked to people about this a lot, that I look at it like this. When I first started my software career, the internet was barely just getting started, and most companies were making client-server software. When the web came out, it was like all of a sudden we can make apps for the web. Well, these messaging platforms, Alexa and all these other things, it's like, oh, now all of a sudden we can make apps not just in the graphical user interface like a web browser or a mobile phone, but we can actually use text or ultimately voice and the other user interfaces. So it changes the way when you're making some product how you do it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, a year ago, you also introduced a freemium model of your project management solution.
Yeah.
I think it's called PI #team.
Yeah, we just call it PI team.
PI team, and
Yeah,
now you have over 1,000 accounts or more using the solution.
yeah.
Can you talk about, what drove you to that kind of freemium model roadmap and what is driving the adoption of it?
Okay, a couple things drove us to that. Like when a few years back, I was looking at our business and how we were running, and it was like I felt like we weren't, we were so narrowly focused on the enterprise that it occurred to us that like, wait a minute, there's, you know, there's just so much more out there that could be done. I mean, there's a lot of tools out there for project management too. So don't get me wrong, there's a ton of tools out there, but we felt like, okay, why shouldn't we offer a free level? Because we do get clients that come from us and they end up using like a lower end tool or a tool that doesn't do like some of the things that Project Insight does is, pretty advanced, but we try to keep it, simple. So we're trying to basically fly under the radar of the traditional old school, really expensive tools. We're under the radar there, but we're above the radar on these really basic tools. And there's tons of free stuff out there, but once you start going down that tool, now it's like, oh, I got to add time tracking, or now I got to add issue tracking, and oh, now I got to add some of the more advanced features that our enterprise product does. You have to switch out of that tool completely. And we get people that come to us, it's like, oh, I was using this tool or that tool, and we have these importer products and programs, but now you have to retrain your whole team on it, right? So our idea was, look, there's tons of people who don't really need that ton. They need enterprise software eventually, or maybe they need a part of enterprise software, and we want to capture those people to get them used to doing things a more, let them have a growth path is what we were thinking, so that they could start with PI Team totally free, really basic, really simple. But if you need to add, say, intelligent scheduling, or you need to add issue tracking, or you need to add more advanced document management, you could just selectively choose to add those pieces and then not have to retrain your staff, not have to move out of the tool. And then also on top of that, the fact that we are trying to build this virtual PM component into things like Slack, we really needed to have a place for someone who, if they're in Slack and they add our app in the directory, they got to go somewhere. Maybe they're not already a client. Like some of our competitors have a Slack app, and it's like, oh, they click the app to install it in Slack. It's like, oh, call our customer service to go buy an account now. Versus if someone uses our app in Slack, it just installs it and it's there. So we had to have a place for the places we've been integrating with, for if someone wants to try it without actually committing, where they would go. So they go into the free PI Team app, and if they decide they need to expand, then we work with them to expand them, or they can just keep using the free tool for forever.
That sounds like a good model. Well,
Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for joining us today and for your time. For more information on Project Insight, be sure to visit their website, and we will be back here next week for SIIA Tech Chats.